guess what I'd maybe say is to build on that story that you just shared, like of the pipes. Like that was, I mean, it was frustrating for me as well, because you obviously are thinking, oh, if we'd really known all of the problems and we could have planned this like 10-point plan to like really change the life of this orphanage or whatever. And like the part of me that always wants to think long term and all of that wants to do that from the beginning. But what we were really hoping these guys would wrestle with was the the inward stirring of what God is doing in your life and what God speaks to you about, and like how God maybe works in your gut for you to recognize injustice and wrong, and how God starts to stir you towards that, and then how, your individual part in the story becomes a part of something so much bigger, this bigger picture, long-term work of God in people's lives and in a whole community and then in the whole world as the kingdom. And so, like, all we could do in that time that we were there with those guys is for them to look at what it is to go in cold somewhere and to build those relationships and to really observe and see and understand um the struggles that they're facing, and start to like, what questions should they ask when they're in that situation to really understand the root of problems and maybe how God can use us to act. And so, yeah, ultimately, if you were there serving in Kenya long term, you would love to be able to support that orphanage to have a better sewage system. Um, but you can't do that by just going in cold and telling them what they need and what is most important. Like, you really need to spend time with people and understand them, and um and then decide when it's time to step in and act and maybe intervene, or to find the right resources to help them help themselves. So I think that kind of sets the image of what it was to lead young people through that experience. Is how can we, like, rather than us just telling them this is what you should do as a missionary, you go in and you do step 1, 2, 3, and that's how you serve with the Church of the Nazarene, but instead helping them to know like what it is to connect with people, what it is to engage with where maybe God is starting to work in a community, and how can you ask the right questions? How can you listen to God? How can you ask God to um, lead you into the next steps after that? And I guess us as a church, how can we help them with the critical thinking that goes with that? Because they did some workshops and stuff that were, how do you actually take a need and work backwards and make a plan to like really understand the culture and the context, and do the right analysis so that you're not causing harm when you're trying to do good. And then they did some things on how to just walk in a community and like assess and all of those kind of things that we maybe take for granted that missionaries, or I mean, I guess probably all of you in your own ways, ministers of the gospel in a community, do um interpret a community and what's happening and what the needs are. So I think the training overall was a really good opportunity for them to start to like adjust their thinking from maybe someone who, especially for young people, I think we are used to maybe young people having the role where we tell them what to do and then they go and do it. Um, that's kind of what ministry with young people often looks like in our churches, but it doesn't need to look that way. What it can look like is supporting young people to how to ask the right questions and how to seek God and seek wisdom, and then them to take the steps on how to act, and then how to bring other people along with them. So I think that was really cool. Yeah, I mean, we obviously have amazing young people all around the world. Obviously, I was there for leading the Eurasia team, and I would really say that Eurasia young people are the best young people, if I was to be biased. But we had a really cool group of young adults that are just all at different points in their journey with God, and all have very different gifts and different callings, but who were able to really bring the different strengths to a team once they were all together. Claire Fender, she's obviously not here, so I could talk about her. She was one of the other leaders that came along because she works with mobilization in the region. And she came to me on like one of the last days and said, all week or for the first few days, I was really mad at you for how you put my team together, because I thought, what the heck are these young people? Why are they in a group together? Why is Amy gave me this really difficult team? Like, these people should not be working together. And then after a few days, she realized, oh, like there's these different gifts, and then there's these little connection points. And yeah, so she just maybe recognized, oh, there's a reason as to why a team doesn't always look the same, and it isn't easy for them to get along from day one, because they have different things to help each other grow in and different things to bring to a learning environment. And I think that's what we really discovered through the young people, that whether it was their maybe cultural diversity or their um, educational diversity, or whether it was just their senses of humor and their own weird ways of being, they all brought something different that helped shape one another, and that was really cool. Um, yeah, and what's that quote of, I love it when a plan comes together. It felt good at the end of the time to, like, after, for me, like a year of figuring out visa applications and flights and fundraising and permission, and talking people through their fears when they wanted to cancel their flights, or talking to their parents, or for the people in the Middle East, talking to different men in their life so that they could give the girls, because they're not used to girls going and traveling alone, and different things like that. I was tearing my hair out sometimes thinking, how can 2 weeks be worth it? But seeing the way that God was able to speak to them and give them this, really life defining experience, like they'll remember that forever. And I think just for us here, as in people in local churches or in a district, thinking about what it looks like to support anyone with a call to missions, for us to think, what is it, the part that we're playing, when when a young person maybe questions or receives a call. Um, we had a great number of young people at this event, and we could have had way more if we'd had maybe the resources, or if we'd promoted it more or whatever. We could have had an infinite number of young people that would have wanted to go and be there. Because God is speaking to his young people, and God is calling them to do something, and God is gifting them to do things in his service. But how are we supporting the whole process of that? Like, if you were to think about your local church, if 50 teenagers showed up at your door and said, we're called into missions, would you have any idea what to do with them? If you even had one young person in your church say, I have a call to missions, God has spoken to me, or I figured it out, and this is what, like, would you be able to help them to discern that and to begin the process? Would you know how to help them share what God is doing? Would you know how to help them begin their journey of fundraising, or their journey of preparing to maybe go and be in a different culture? Would you know how to disciple them as someone that's in their local church or in their district? Would you know how to communicate with them while they're gone, to keep getting updates and praying for them and sharing? And what is a great and way to do that so that they feel supported from a distance? And then what would you know what to do when they come back, like how to support them as they maybe come back to their home culture, and they've had this life-changing experience that no one else that they're now with will understand or relate with. And then they have all these new things that they want to apply to their home context, but they don't know how to do it. So I think for all of you as maybe lovers and supporters of missions or NMI, to think about how you can start to equip yourselves or people in your churches to be great supporters of missions in those ways, even if they're not going to go on mission themselves. And yeah, just to really believe that God is speaking to young people and God is equipping them, and to not be scared of what it looks like when we send them out, but to be there for their questions and their searching and their prayers when they do it.